My 13-year-old daughter Emma came home from soccer practice and her key wouldn't turn. She waited for 6 hours in the pouring rain. Then my stepmother appeared at the window and mouthed the words, "You don't belong here anymore." I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I simply said, "I understand." 4 days later, my stepmother received a certified letter. Her face turned the color of old newspaper. It started as just another exhausting Tuesday at Chicago Memorial Hospital. The kind of day that grinds you down to nothing. 17 patients, 2 code blues, and a cafeteria out of everything except stale pretzels and regret. I'd been on my feet for 9 hours straight, living on vending machine coffee and pure spite. We were chronically understaffed. The spring flu had knocked out half our nurses, and the other half were covering double shifts, running on fumes and questionable decisions. I'd already been screamed at 3 times before lunch, once by a patient's son who thought volume equaled medical expertise, once by Dr. Richardson who believed condescension was a teaching method, and once by a woman demanding we cure her. Husband's 20-year smoking habit in the next 15 minutes. I was surviving, on 4 hours of sleep and an energy drink that tasted like battery acid mixed with broken dreams. My scrubs had coffee stains on coffee stains. My hair was doing something architectural and unfortunate. I'd stopped looking in mirrors around hour 6. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. Normally, I'm religious about ignoring personal calls during shifts. Patients come first, always. But something made me glance at the screen. Call it mother's intuition. Call it divine intervention. Call it the universe finally throwing me a bone. 12 missed calls from Emma. 12 Emma, my quiet, careful daughter. The kid who says "excuse me" to chairs when she bumps them. The one who writes thank you notes to delivery drivers. She'd rather eat glass than bother anyone. 12 calls meant something was catastrophically wrong. I ducked into the supply closet, my heart already hammering against my ribs, and hit redial. She answered on the first ring. "Mom?" Her voice sounded small and strangled, like she was trying to breathe through a straw. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "My key. It won't work." I frowned, my brain still half in work mode, trying to solve 17 problems at once. "What do you mean it won't work?" "It won't go in the lock." I think they changed it." "They?" The word came out sharper than I intended. Diane. Maybe Aunt Jessica. I don't know. A shaky breath. "Mom, I can't get in." I pressed my forehead against the cold metal shelving, surrounded by boxes of gauze and latex gloves, trying to make sense of this. "Emma, they wouldn't change the locks without telling us." "That doesn't make any sense." Silence. Then a small, heartbreaking sniffle. "Can you please come home?" I glanced at the clock mounted above the door. 3:47 p.m. I had another 2 hours minimum before I could even think about leaving. We were drowning, and I was one of 3 nurses holding the entire floor together. "Honey, I can't right now. We're completely slammed. Try calling Diane, okay? Or Aunt Jessica. Someone's probably home." "I already did." Her voice cracked. "Nobody's answering." "Keep trying, sweetheart. I promise someone will open that door soon. Just give them a few more minutes, okay?" "Okay." But her voice said she didn't believe me. When the call ended, I stood there for a long moment, staring at boxes of medical supplies, telling myself this was nothing. A misunderstanding, a faulty lock. Emma probably just had the wrong key in her hand. I shoved the phone back into my pocket and went back to saving other people. 3 hours later, during a brief moment between checking vitals and changing IV bags, I looked at my phone again. 8 more missed calls, 2 text messages. The first, "Mom, I think they're inside." "Please come." The second, "It's raining." "I'm getting cold." My stomach dropped straight through the floor. I stepped into the hallway, ignoring the beeping monitors and call lights and the general chaos of a hospital at peak hour, and called her immediately. She answered mid-sob. "Mom, Emma, talk to me." "What's happening?" "They won't let me in." Her words came out in gasps between crying. Diane came to the door. She looked right at me and said, "We don't live here anymore." Everything went cold and sharp. "She said what?" "She told me to stop knocking." She said I'm being dramatic and causing a scene. Then she closed the blinds. I felt something dark and vicious unfold inside my chest, the kind of rage that makes your vision narrow and your hands shake. Emma, listen to me very carefully. Are you safe right now? I'm sitting under the front porch overhang. Is it still raining? Yeah, pretty hard. Okay, stay exactly where you are. Don't move. I'm leaving right now. Do you understand? I'm coming to get you. Okay. A tiny broken whisper. I didn't ask for permission. I found charge nurse Martinez and said, "Family emergency. My daughter's locked outside in the rain. I'm leaving." She started to protest. We were critically short. Patients needed care. Protocols existed for a reason. But something in my face stopped her cold. "Go," she said quietly. "I'll cover." 5 minutes later, I was in my Honda Civic, scrubs still damp with hand sanitizer, rain hammering the windshield and sheets. Chicago traffic crawled like wounded animals, but I drove like someone possessed, weaving through lanes. Hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. It's a strange thing, how quickly your brain can flip from professional to primal. 1 second, you're a pediatric nurse with 16 years of experience. The next, you're just a mother, driving through a storm, ready to burn down the entire world to keep your child safe. By the time I pulled into the driveway of the house in Oak Park, it was almost dark. Emma was curled up on the front porch, knees pulled to her chest, soaking wet. Her backpack sat beside her like a loyal but useless guardian. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her lips had a bluish tint. I ran to her, pulled her into my arms. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered, like this was somehow her fault. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I said, my voice raw and fierce. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do." She nodded against my shoulder, still trembling violently. Then the porch light blazed on. The front door opened. Diane stood there, wine glass in hand, perfectly styled hair, expression of mild annoyance, like we were neighbors who'd shown up uninvited to a dinner party. "Sarah," she said with manufactured surprise. "What on earth are you doing here?" I stared at her. "You changed the locks," she sighed dramatically. "We needed our space back. This arrangement wasn't working anymore. You locked my 13-year-old daughter outside in a thunderstorm. She's fine." Diane waved her free hand dismissively. "She's a teenager. They're resilient. She's 13. Diane tilted her head with that same patronizing expression she'd perfected over the years, the look that says I'm being reasonable. "And you're being hysterical. Jessica and I have made a decision. You and Emma don't live here anymore. It's better this way. Less conflict. Less tension. Healthier boundaries." "Who's we?" I asked, though I already knew. "Jessica and myself. We discussed it thoroughly and agreed this is what's best for everyone." Of course, my stepsister Jessica, who'd been circling this house like a vulture since the day Dad died. Behind Diane, Jessica appeared in the doorway, perfectly manicured nails wrapped around her phone. Concern painted across her face like a Halloween mask. "Diane, maybe we should talk about this later," she said in that fake, gentle voice that made my skin crawl. "Oh. Stop it, Jessica." Diane's voice turned sharp. "Sarah's an adult. She's a nurse. She has a career. She'll figure something out." I looked past them into the living room. Jessica's twins, Mason and Chloe, were sprawled on the sectional sofa watching Netflix. Emma's favorite blanket, the one with the hand-sewn stars she'd made in 4th grade, was folded neatly on the ottoman beside them. Something inside me went very still and very cold. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. Didn't argue. I just looked at Diane and said, "Understood." She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "What?" "You heard me." I turned, took Emma's freezing hand in mine, and walked back to the car. We drove through the storm without speaking. Rain drummed against the roof in a relentless rhythm. The windshield wipers beat back and forth like a metronome counting the seconds of our displacement. After what felt like an eternity, Emma whispered, "Are we going to be okay?" "Of course we are," I said with more confidence than I felt. She nodded slowly, watching streetlights blur past the window. Diane doesn't like me, does she? The question hit me like a punch to the chest. I forced a smile. Diane doesn't really like anyone, sweetheart. It's not about you. Emma almost smiled. Almost. The silence in that car felt heavier than the rain outside. Emma eventually fell asleep against the window, her breath fogging the glass, while I drove on autopilot and tried not to replay every terrible moment of the evenings. And your mom don't live here anymore. Right. Because throwing out a traumatized 13-year-old is just good housekeeping. I wish I could say I was shocked, but when someone shows you who they are for decades, you don't get to claim surprise. You just finally start believing them. That's when I realized this didn't start tonight. It started 34 years ago. When I was little, there were 5 of us in that Oak Park house. Me, my dad, my mom, Diane, and Jessica, Diane's daughter from her first marriage. Jessica was 6 years older, 6 inches taller, and approximately 1 million times more important in Diane's eyes. If Jessica got an A-, Diane threw a celebration dinner. If I got straight A's, she reminded me not to get arrogant. If Jessica forgot to do her chores, it was because she was busy with important things. If I forgot, I was lazy and disrespectful. My biological mother left when I was 4. I have exactly 3 memories of her: the smell of her vanilla perfume, the way she sang off-key in the kitchen, and the sound of the front door closing that final time. Dad remarried 2 years later. Diane swept in like a tornado in designer shoes, bringing Jessica and a complete set of new rules I'd never agreed to follow. Dad was a cardiothoracic surgeon, the best in Chicago, according to everyone who mattered. He was also never home, always between surgeries and conferences and medical journals and research papers. When he was home, he smelled like hospital disinfectant and exhaustion. He'd ruffle my hair, tell me I was a good kid, and fall asleep in his recliner with his pager still clipped to his belt. I loved him desperately anyway. At least he remembered I existed. Diane didn't, unless she needed a target. She called me overly sensitive when I cried and cold when I didn't. She said I was too much and not enough often in the same conversation. Jessica could destroy the kitchen experimenting with recipes, and Diane would post photos on Facebook celebrating her creativity. I once dropped a ceramic mug and got grounded for a week for being careless. Fair system. By the time I turned 17, I was so desperate to escape that community college looked like paradise. I thought distance would fix everything. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Problems have excellent frequent flyer miles. When I met Emma's father during my sophomore year at Northwestern, I mistook attention for affection and charm for character. Marcus was older, confident, had a smile that could sell ice to Antarctica. I was 20 with the self-worth of a houseplant someone forgot to water. He bought me flowers once, so obviously we were soulmates. 18 months later, I was pregnant. 2 years after that, he was gone. It ended the way cheap magic tricks do, quickly, and with everyone pretending to be surprised. He got a better opportunity in Seattle, or Denver, or maybe just a different bar stool. I stopped keeping track after the 3rd forwarding address. What I remember most clearly is sitting in my tiny apartment bathroom at 3 a.m, positive pregnancy test in one hand and my half-finished nursing school application in the other, wondering how I was supposed to do both. Turns out, you just do. You work, you study, you sleep in 4-hour increments. You learn that crying in hospital break rooms counts as legitimate self-care. You also learn that exhaustion becomes part of your personality, less a temporary condition, more a lifestyle brand. But we managed. Emma and I lived in a shoebox apartment in Evanston, surrounded by medical textbooks and overdue bills, held together with takeout food and overtime shifts. We weren't happy exactly, but we were free. And that felt close enough to good. 4 years ago, Dad retired from surgery. He'd spent 40 years cutting people open and putting them back together. Now he wanted to spend time with family, make up for lost years, be the grandfather he'd never had time to be before. He called one random Thursday afternoon and asked if he could take Emma to the Museum of Science and Industry. Then it became a weekly thing, Every Saturday, Dad would show up with deep dish pizza and stories about impossible surgeries and miracle recoveries. Emma absolutely adored him. He adored her right back. They had the same quiet way of observing people, like they were cataloging secrets nobody else could see. Diane hated it. Every visit reminded her that I existed, that Dad's attention wasn't exclusively hers to control. Then, 2.5 years ago, Dad got sick. I won't name it. You don't need the medical terminology to understand the weight. All you need to know is that it came fast, progressed faster, and didn't leave. Diane called late one night, her voice trembling with that particular tone she uses when she wants to sound fragile and tragic. He needs help. Sarah, you're a nurse. Translation, come fix this. Come be useful for once. So Emma and I moved in. I told myself it was temporary, just until he got better. Or worse. Whichever came first. Those 18 months were the only time that house ever felt like home. Dad was kind, grateful, present in ways he'd never been before. I ran that house like a small hospital ward. Medication charts, meal schedules, physical therapy routines, doctor's appointments, order, structure, control. Diane floated around playing the martyr, her favorite role, acting like Florence Nightingale, except her uniform was whine and denial. When Jessica visited with her husband, Derek, and the twins, Diane transformed into this glowing, generous host, throwing elaborate dinners that looked more like auditions for sainthood than family meals. The second they left, the lights went out again. Back to wine and silence. 5 weeks ago, Dad's body finally gave up. His heart stopped at 4:37 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was holding his hand. Diane was asleep in the guest room. The funeral flowers hadn't even started wilting when Diane began redecorating. Grief does strange things to people. Some fall apart. Some drink. Some throw themselves into work. My stepmother redecorated 4 days after we buried Dad. She was already moving furniture around, humming to herself, talking about fresh energy and new chapters. She started with Dad's study, his sanctuary, the room where he'd spent thousands of hours reading medical journals and classical literature. She painted it sage green, changed the curtains from navy to cream, boxed up his books. She said it would make a perfect guest room for when Jessica and the family visit. Within a week, it looked like a West Elm catalog. New twin beds, matching nightstands, framed photos of Mason and Chloe on the dresser. Not a single photo of Dad. Not one. I remember standing in that doorway, still wearing black from the funeral, watching her hang decorative throw pillows like nothing had happened. She looked energized, happy, like someone preparing for a vacation instead of dismantling a life. I wanted to ask how she could do this so soon, but she spoke first. Jessica and Derek might come stay next month, she said brightly. The twins shouldn't have to squeeze into that old guest room anymore. They'll need proper space. She smiled like she was explaining something perfectly reasonable. I nodded because what else do you do when your stepmother is treating grief like an interior design project? After that, the visits multiplied. Jessica's family was there almost every weekend. They had their own keys. Their laughter echoed through rooms that used to belong to my father. And somehow, Emma and I, who actually lived there, started feeling like temporary guests overstaying our welcome. Diane called it healing. She said it made the house feel alive again. Meanwhile, Emma and I stayed crammed in the smallest bedroom down the hall, our beds pressed against opposite walls, our belongings squeezed into whatever space nobody else wanted. Diane called it cozy. I called it suffocating. One night, I overheard her in the kitchen whispering to Jessica. "Rent in Chicago is absolutely insane right now," she said. "It just makes financial sense for you to move in permanently. We'd all save money. And the twins love it here." Then quieter. "Besides, Sarah probably won't stay much longer anyway. She was only here for Robert. Now that he's gone..." I stood frozen in the hallway, holding a mug of tea that suddenly tasted like metal, realizing I was being erased. Edited out. Written over. It hadn't even been a month since Dad died. And already I was disappearing. When I finally confronted Diane about it 3 days later, she smiled that smile, the one that says she's caught me being dramatic again. "You said yourself you were here to help your father," she said calmly. "He's gone now, Sarah. You have your job, your own life, your apartment in Evanston. It's time to move forward, move forward." Like grief was a lease agreement with an expiration date. 5 days after that conversation, Thomas Whitmore, the estate attorney who'd handled Dad's affairs, called my cell. "Just some paperwork to finalize," he said. "Can you come by the office?" I drove to his office in downtown Chicago expecting insurance forms and death certificates. Instead, he handed me a thick manila folder. "Your father established a living trust 18 months ago," he explained carefully. "He wanted to make absolutely certain the house stayed with you and Emma." I blinked. "What do you mean, stayed with me?" "It's yours," he said simply. "He transferred the property into the trust before his death. Your stepmother isn't listed anywhere on the deed. She has no legal claim to the property." The words didn't register immediately. When they finally did, all I could think was how quickly everything had shifted. 4 weeks from eulogies to eviction notices. I thanked him, took the papers, and drove home with them sitting on the passenger seat, unopened. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet, because how do you walk into a house full of people and say, "Actually, all of this is mine"? I thought I'd wait for the right moment. Let everyone grieve properly. Let things calm down naturally. But 6 days later, Diane changed the locks. I didn't sleep after the lockout. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma curled on that porch, soaking wet, shivering, abandoned. By sunrise, the adrenaline had crystallized into something colder and sharper. Rage with a roadmap. I made 2 phone calls before my coffee went cold. One to Chicago Memorial requesting emergency family leave. One to Thomas Whitmore. He answered on the second ring. "Sarah," he said, already sounding alert. "She changed the locks," I told him. "She locked Emma out in the rain for 6 hours. There was a pause. Papers rustled. "Your stepmother?" "Yes." "Do you have the trust documents?" "In my car." "Bring them." "Come to my office now." His office was 12 minutes away. Not 12 hours, not 12 months. Just 12 minutes and 2 traffic lights. Thomas looked calm in that particular way only people paid by the hour can manage. The kind of calm that costs $350 but feels worth every penny. "This is straightforward," he said, scanning the pages. "The property is in the trust. You're the trustee. She has no legal standing whatsoever." "Then fix it. I'll draft a notice of trespass and demand for possession. How soon do you want this served?" He checked his watch. "Give me 45 minutes. He typed while I stood by his office window, watching Chicago traffic crawl past below, feeling something like power returning to my body for the first time in weeks. "Do you want to serve it personally, or shall I?" he asked. I laughed once, sharp, bitter. "I've had enough doors slammed in my face for one lifetime. You do it." He printed, signed, sealed everything, and handed me a copy. The ink was still wet. Beautiful. An hour later, we were parked down the street from the Oak Park house. Same gray sky, same rain. Like the weather was stuck on repeat. Emma stayed with my friend Michelle downtown. No way was I letting her anywhere near this scene. Thomas walked up the driveway, umbrella open, envelope tucked under his arm, looking every bit the professional delivering devastating news. I stayed in the car, engine running, wipers ticking back and forth across the windshield. Diane answered almost immediately. Even from 50 yards away, I could read her body language. Impatient, superior, inconvenienced. Thomas spoke calmly, professionally. He handed her the papers. At first, she didn't even look. Just rolled her eyes and said something I couldn't hear. Probably something dismissive about lawyers and wasting her time. Then she read the first line. Her face changed completely. Color drained. Eyes widened. Jessica appeared behind her, coffee mug in hand, looking like she'd been cast in exactly the drama she'd secretly been hoping for. She snatched the papers from Diane's hands, scanned them quickly, and started shouting. Thomas didn't flinch. He said something brief, probably a polite legal translation of, "You've been evicted," then turned and walked back to the car with the same calm, measured pace. Diane yelled after him, words lost in the rain and distance. He slid into the passenger seat, closed the door with a solid click, and said, "It's served." That was it. The drive back to his office was silent except for the windshield wipers. I kept expecting to feel triumphant, vindicated, victorious. But all I felt was exhaustion, finally shifting off my chest like someone had removed a weight I'd been carrying for years. It wasn't triumph. It was oxygen. When we reached his office building, Thomas said, "She'll try to contest this." I'd be disappointed if she didn't. He smiled faintly. "I'll handle any filings. For now, she's officially trespassing on your property." "Good," I said. "Let her explain that to the police." He nodded once and got out, umbrella blooming above him. I watched him disappear into the building before driving away. Back at Michelle's apartment, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table working on homework. She looked up when I walked in. "Did you talk to the lawyer?" "Yeah." "Are we going home?" "Soon, sweetheart." "Very soon." She nodded, serious beyond her years. "Diane's going to be really mad, isn't she?" "Diane's been mad since 1987, I said. "She'll survive." Emma giggled, the first real laugh I'd heard from her in weeks. I decided right then that this was the sound I'd fight for from now on. This laugh. This peace. The days after serving the notice blurred together in a haze of paperwork, phone calls, and legal procedures. Rain, lawyers, more rain, more lawyers. Thomas called that same night. "She's hired counsel," he said. "They're claiming you fabricated the lockout. They're also alleging undue influence over your father, saying you manipulated him into changing the trust." I laughed because apparently caring for a dying parent is suspicious now. He didn't laugh. Thomas never laughs. "I'm filing for emergency possession. The police report helps significantly." I'd gone to the Oak Park Police Department that morning, sat in a sterile interview room under buzzing fluorescent lights, and told a young officer exactly how my stepmother had locked a 13-year-old outside in a thunderstorm for 6 hours. He'd typed everything quietly, his jaw getting tighter with each sentence. When I finished, he looked up and said, "That's child endangerment, ma'am. You absolutely did the right thing." Thomas attached the police report to our emergency petition. The judge signed the order 36 hours later. Fastest justice I'd ever seen. Diane's lawyer tried to stall with a motion full of bold fonts and italics and exactly zero evidence. The court denied it before lunch. Thomas called again. "The sheriff's office will schedule enforcement within the week. That fast?" "You wanted fast," he said. That night, I told Emma we'd be going home soon. She was quiet for a moment, picking at her thumbnail. Then she asked, "Are they still going to be there? Diane and them?" "No," I said firmly. "Not anymore." She nodded slowly, understanding something bigger than she should have to at 13. When the email arrived with the date and time, 10 a.m. Thursday, it still didn't feel entirely real. But there it was on the screen in official legal language. Writ of possession. Immediate enforcement. The morning of the eviction, I woke before my alarm, heart already racing. The sky looked metallic again. Gray, restless, angry. I made coffee strong enough to strip paint and drank it standing at Michelle's kitchen counter, staring at nothing. Thomas had emailed the schedule the night before. 10 a.m. sharp. Sheriff's enforcement, standard procedure. 2 words I'd been desperately waiting for. Standard procedure. Because nothing about my family had ever been standard. Emma was at school. I'd told her I had errands to run, appointments to keep. She believed me because kids want to believe their parents have everything under control. I didn't want her anywhere near this. No child should watch people they used to call family being escorted out by law enforcement. When I pulled onto the street in Oak Park, my stomach twisted into knots. 3 vehicles in the driveway. Of course, Jessica's white Escalade, Derek's truck, Diane's Mercedes sedan. They were all home for the grand finale. 2 sheriff's deputies were already at the front door when I parked across the street. I stayed near the sidewalk, rain starting to mist down again, pretending to check my phone like this was someone else's drama. From inside came voices, sharp, familiar, furious. Diane first, high and offended, playing the victim with practiced perfection. Then Jessica, dramatic and wailing like she was auditioning for a daytime soap opera. Derek chimed in with that useless, aggressive tone some men use when they think volume equals authority. One of the deputies knocked again, firmer this time, official. The door flew open. Diane appeared, hair perfect, makeup perfect, fury absolutely perfect. She pointed directly at me across the yard like I was a demon she was banishing. "She's the one," she yelled. "She forged everything. This is elder abuse." The deputy didn't even glance my direction. "Ma'am, we have a court order." Jessica appeared behind her, phone held high, recording everything, probably already planning her Facebook post. "This is illegal," she announced to no one in particular. "You can't throw out a widow," Derek muttered. Something about lawyers and rights and constitutional violations while crossing his arms like a bouncer at a terrible club. The deputy read the order anyway. Calm, steady, professional. He explained that they had exactly 20 minutes to collect essential personal items and vacate the property. 20 minutes. Diane laughed. That brittle, disbelieving sound. "You cannot be serious." He was. They started pacing, arguing, knocking things over, creating chaos. Jessica cried harder. Impressive, given that she'd already seemed at maximum crying capacity. Derek slammed a door somewhere. Diane kept repeating, "This is my home," like repetition could rewrite reality. I just stood there, halfway up the walkway, hands in my jacket pockets, rain starting to soak through my clothes, saying absolutely nothing. When the deputies stepped aside to let them exit, Jessica stormed out first, carrying an armful of clothes, and 2 framed pictures, one of the twins, one of Dad that she'd taken from his office. I almost said something. Almost. Then I remembered. Not my circus anymore. Not my monkeys. Derek followed, dragging a box and glaring at me like he thought I'd be enjoying this spectacle. He wasn't entirely wrong. Diane was last. She paused on the threshold, turned toward me slowly, deliberately. Her eyes were glassy with something between pure hatred and complete disbelief. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said, her voice dripping with venom. I wasn't proud. I was exhausted. I was done. She walked past me without another word, heels clicking on the wet pavement. The deputies closed the door behind her with a solid, final sound that echoed in the sudden silence. One deputy handed me a set of keys, new locks they'd installed per the court order. "Ma'am," he said, "the property is legally yours now." 4 words heavier than I'd expected. I thanked him. My voice cracked halfway through. When their cars finally pulled away, Diane's Mercedes spraying water from the puddles, Jessica's Escalade leaving angry tire marks. I stood alone in the drizzle, staring at the house that had been both battlefield and cage for so long. I went inside slowly. The air smelled like dust and expensive perfume, sweet rot. A wine glass sat abandoned on the granite counter, lipstick stain on the rim. Jessica's jacket hung over a chair. It looked less like people had lived there, and more like they'd vanished mid-scene. Rapture style. I opened windows one by one, letting the rain-scrubbed air drift through, clearing out everything that had been suffocating this place. For just a second, I thought I heard Dad's voice in the quiet. "You did what you had to do. I wanted to believe him." That evening, I picked Emma up from school. She climbed into the car, then froze when she saw the boxes in the back seat. "Are we moving again?" she asked carefully. "Home," I said. "We're going home." The word felt strange in my mouth, like something I hadn't used properly in years, like a muscle I'd forgotten how to flex. When we walked through the door, the house echoed differently. Empty but ours. Emma ran from room to room, touching everything like she was claiming territory, reclaiming space that had always belonged to her. "This is ours again," she said, standing in what used to be Dad's study, what Diane had turned into a guest room, what would now become whatever we wanted. "Yeah," I whispered. "It always was. It's been 9 months since the eviction. Emma and I haven't spoken to any of them. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. I blocked every number, every email, every possible avenue of contact. Peace looks really good on a phone screen. I still get updates, though. Small-town gossip doesn't require permission or participation. Thomas hears things through the legal community grapevine. A nurse I used to work with at Chicago Memorial lives 3 blocks from Jessica's new rental and apparently can't help herself from sharing. According to the reports, Diane moved in with Jessica and Derek immediately after losing the house. It lasted approximately 6 weeks before nuclear meltdown. Diane started reorganizing their entire house. New furniture arrangements, new curtains, new rules about dinner times and cleaning schedules and how Jessica was raising the twins all wrong. Derek didn't take it well. They had a massive fight that ended with Diane changing the locks on their bedroom, her favorite move apparently, and Derek packing a bag. He moved into an extended stay hotel. The separation is ongoing. Now Diane and Jessica live together in that rental house, which everyone who knows them says is going wonderfully if you define wonderfully as 2 people passive-aggressively competing for oxygen and control. Their latest argument made it onto the local community Facebook group. Someone took a screenshot and sent it to me. I didn't ask for it, but I didn't delete it either. Diane had posted an old dresser for sale on Marketplace. Jessica commented publicly, "That's my dresser. You don't even live here. You're the guest. Beautiful symmetry. Poetry, really. As for us, we're good. Better than good. Emma's been helping me in the garden Dad started years ago, but never had time to maintain. She says everything grows faster when you stop shouting at it. I think she's right. The house is quiet now. Peaceful. No unexpected visitors. No new locks. No new storms. And best of all, nobody's tried to move in uninvited. Emma turned 14 last month. We had a small party in the backyard. Just her 3 closest friends from school, pizza from Lou Malnati's, and a homemade cake that leaned slightly to the left but tasted perfect. She laughed so hard that night that she snorted lemonade out of her nose. I stood at the kitchen window watching her, thinking about that terrified, soaking wet kid on the porch 9 months ago, and I realized this is what winning looks like. Not a courtroom victory or a legal document. Just my daughter laughing with her friends in a home that's actually ours. She's doing better in school now. Her grades went from B's and C's to straight A's. Her guidance counselor called last week to tell me Emma wrote a college essay about resilience and home. Apparently it made her cry. "Your daughter is remarkable," she said. "I know," I replied. "Because I do. As for me, I'm back to full-time at Chicago Memorial. Dr. Richardson still has the personality of a cactus, but I've learned not to take it personally. The hospital promoted me to senior pediatric nurse last month. Better pay, better hours, better everything. I can finally afford to not just survive, but actually live. I repainted Dad's study. Not to erase him, never that, but to honor him differently. It's a library now, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with his medical texts and my nursing manuals, and Emma's growing collection of science fiction novels. His favorite leather chair sits in the corner by the window. Sometimes I sit there with coffee and just exist in the quiet. I framed one of his old prescription pads and hung it on the wall. He'd written on it years ago before he got sick. The best medicine is having something worth fighting for. I found it in his desk drawer while sorting through his things. It felt like he'd left me a message. I've started therapy too. Turns out, decades of being told you're not enough leaves some marks. My therapist, Dr. Patricia Chen, is helping me unpack all of it. The childhood stuff, the stepmother stuff, the guilt I didn't even realize I was carrying. Last week, she said something that stuck with me. You spent your whole life trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. Now you get to learn what it feels like to simply be enough. I cried in her office for 20 minutes. Good tears. Healing tears. I joined a support group for single mothers. We meet every other Tuesday at a community center in Evanston. 8 women, all with different stories, all somehow the same story underneath. We drink terrible coffee from an industrial-sized percolator that's probably older than all of us combined. And we talk about the hard stuff nobody wants to post on Instagram. Last meeting, a woman named Monica shared that her ex-husband's new wife tried to replace her at their daughter's parent-teacher conference. She was shaking while she told us, like she was ashamed of being angry about it. I told her about Diane changing the locks, about Emma sitting in the rain for 6 hours, about the eviction. The room went dead silent. Then Monica said, "Did you really throw her out with sheriff's deputies?" Yes, she smiled, this huge, beautiful, vindicated smile. "You're my hero," everyone laughed. It felt good. It felt like finding your people. Emma asks about Diane sometimes. Not often, maybe once every few months. But when she does, I try to be honest without being cruel. Do you think she's sorry? Emma asked last week while we were planting tomatoes in the garden. I thought about it carefully. I think she's probably sorry things didn't work out the way she wanted. That's different from being sorry for what she did. Emma nodded, processing. Do you think she ever loved me? That question. That impossible, heartbreaking question. I think Diane loves people the way she knows how, I said slowly. Which isn't very well. And that's not your fault, Emma. That's her limitation, not your value. She was quiet for a moment, patting dirt around a tomato seedling. I'm glad we don't live with her anymore. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. I've thought a lot about forgiveness over these past months. Whether I owe it to Diane. Whether forgiveness would somehow make me a better person, more evolved, more spiritually mature. Dr. Chen says forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's not a bill that comes due. It's a choice you make if and when it serves your healing, not theirs. I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be, and I'm learning to be okay with that. What I have found is something better than forgiveness: indifference. I don't hate Diane anymore. I don't fantasize about revenge or wish bad things on her. I simply don't think about her. She's become irrelevant to my life, and that feels like the ultimate freedom. Someone wise once said that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. They were right. Last month, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten envelope, my name and address in shaky cursive. No return address. I knew immediately it was from Diane. I stood at the mailbox for 5 full minutes holding that envelope, debating whether to open it or throw it directly into the trash. Emma was at school. I was alone with this decision. Finally, I opened it. The letter was 3 pages long, dramatic, rambling, full of justifications and rewritten history. She claimed she'd only been trying to help me by encouraging independence. She said she'd made mistakes, but I'd overreacted. She suggested we could move past this as a family if I would just see reason. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge what she'd done to Emma. The word sorry appeared nowhere in 3 full pages. I read it twice, just to make sure I wasn't missing something. Then I did something that felt incredibly satisfying. I wrote "Return to sender" on the envelope and put it back in the mailbox. I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to argue or defend or explain. She wasn't owed my words, my energy, or my emotional labor. The mailman picked it up the next day. I watched from the kitchen window, drinking coffee, feeling absolutely nothing. Thomas Whitmore called a few weeks ago with news. Diane and Jessica had filed one final lawsuit, something about challenging the validity of Dad's trust, claiming diminished mental capacity when he signed it. Is this going anywhere? I asked, already tired. Absolutely not, Thomas said. We have medical records. Witness testimony from 3 doctors, and documented proof that your father was completely lucid when he established the trust. Their case is dead on arrival, but they had to try. Of course they did. I'll file for dismissal. It'll be over in 60 days. And Sarah? He paused. After this, they're out of legal options. It's done. Good, I said. Send me the bill. He laughed. Already in the mail. 63 days later, the judge dismissed their case with prejudice. It's over. Finally, completely, legally over. I've started dating again. Nothing serious yet, just coffee dates and dinner conversations and remembering what it feels like to be seen as more than just Emma's mom or the nurse on duty. Last week I went out with a guy named Marcus. Different Marcus. No relation to Emma's father. Hopefully better judgment on my part this time. He's a high school history teacher, funny and kind, with the kind of laugh that makes everyone around him smile. We talked for 3 hours at a coffee shop in Logan Square. At one point, he asked about my family, and I gave him the abbreviated version. Complicated. Not close. Working on it in therapy. He nodded like he understood. Family's messy. Anyone who says otherwise is lying or lucky. I liked that answer. When I got home that night, Emma was sprawled on the couch reading. She looked up with this knowing smile. How was your date? How did you know it was a date? Mom, you wore your nice jeans and the earrings you only wear for special occasions. I'm 13, not blind, I laughed. It was nice. Really nice. Are you going to see him again? Maybe. If he asks. She went back to her book, smiling. Good. You deserve nice things. Out of the mouths of teenagers, sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet and Emma's asleep upstairs, I walk through these rooms and think about everything that's happened. The good, the terrible, the complicated in between. This house holds a lot of memories. Not all of them mine, not all of them happy. But it's ours now, Emma's and mine. We get to decide what happens next. We get to write the next chapters. I've started thinking about the future in ways I couldn't before. Maybe we'll renovate the kitchen. Maybe Emma will go to Northwestern like I did, study whatever sets her soul on fire. Maybe I'll eventually go back to school, get my nurse practitioner certification, open my own practice. Maybe that nice history teacher will become something more than coffee dates. Maybe none of that will happen and we'll find completely different adventures. The point is, it's possible now. The future is ours to imagine and create, not something happening to us while we try to survive someone else's dysfunction. Last Sunday, Emma and I were working in the garden. The tomatoes are thriving, the basil is completely out of control, and we've got zucchini that could probably qualify as weapons, when she suddenly said, "Mom, can I ask you something?" Always. Do you think Grandpa knew about what Diane would do after he died? I sat back on my heels, considering. I think he suspected. That's why he made sure the house was protected, why he set up the trust the way he did. So he was protecting us. Yeah, sweetheart, even after he was gone, he was protecting us. She smiled, sad and grateful at the same time. I miss him. Me too. We sat there in the garden, soil under our fingernails, sunshine warm on our faces, missing someone who loved us enough to make sure we'd be okay. That's what good parents do. They protect their children, even from family, especially from family. So here we are, 9 months later, still standing. Actually, more than standing. We're thriving. Emma's happy. I'm healing. The house is ours. The future is wide open. Did I go too far? Did I not go far enough? Honestly, I don't know, and I'm learning not to care. I protected my daughter. I enforced legal boundaries. I refused to be erased. If that makes me the villain in someone else's story, I can live with that. Because in my daughter's story, the only one that really matters, I'm the mother who showed up, who fought back, who said, "Enough is enough," and meant it. I'm the mother who came to get her when she was locked out in the rain, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. The house that tried to reject us became the home that saved us. And now it's just ours. Simple as that. It's been 18 months now since that rainy night. Emma just started her freshman year of high school. She joined the debate team and the environmental club. She's talking about maybe becoming a doctor like her grandfather, or maybe an environmental lawyer, or maybe both somehow. The world is wide open for her. I'm seeing Marcus regularly now, the history teacher. He's met Emma. They bonded over a mutual love of terrible puns and Thai food. He makes me laugh. He makes me feel like myself. That's enough for now. Last week I got a text from an unknown number. Just one line. "I hope you're happy now." I stared at it for a long moment, knowing exactly who it was from without having to ask. I blocked the number and deleted the message. Then I went outside where Emma was reading on the porch swing Dad installed 20 years ago, and I sat beside her. The late summer air smelled like cut grass and possibility. "What are you reading?" I asked. She held up the book. "Something for English class. It's actually pretty good." "That's the best kind of assigned reading." She smiled and went back to her book. I closed my eyes and listened to the neighborhood sounds. Kids playing basketball. Down the street, someone mowing their lawn, birds arguing in the oak tree. Normal sounds, safe sounds, home sounds. Am I happy? Yeah. Actually, I am, and that right there is the best revenge of all.